FBI Director Christopher Wray was at the Munich Security Conference this past weekend, where all these world leaders gathered to talk about the greatest security issues facing the world. And many people are saying, I think appropriately, that right now the world is as unsafe as it was in the years leading up to World War II. And by the way, just another quick tidbit, a great historian, Neil Ferguson, has a theory, or I guess a hypothesis, where he says that, we tend to date World War II, the start of World War II, at 1939 when Hitler invaded Poland. He said that's not right. World War II actually started in 1933 when Japan invaded Manchuria and seized Manchuria. And he said essentially that there were all of these kind of separate events that were occurring in the 1930s. And people could look at them and go, okay, I know that that's bad, that's not good, that's scary, right? But it wasn't obvious that they would come together. But then in the fullness of time, they did. I mean, people in the 1930s would never have thought, or would have been very reluctant to think, that whatever was going on in Japan with their imperial aggression would have had anything to do with what was going on in Germany with Hitler's rise to power and the persecution of Jews. But they came together. And I think that we are in a similar moment right now, where we're kind of looking around the world and we're going, okay, North Korea rewrote its constitution to say that it wants to reoccupy, reclaim, and resubjugate South Korea. China's encroaching on Taiwan. Putin invaded Ukraine. There was the greatest massacre in Israel's history, the single greatest amount of Jews killed in a day since the Holocaust, and now there's an ensuing war. Iran is beefing up its nuclear capabilities. Iran, Russia, and China are forming a kind of de facto alliance. You look at these things, and again, they're not great, but you don't quite see how they're coming together. But I think in the fullness of time, sadly, they will come together. And this is a critical piece of the puzzle. Christopher Wray said at this Munich Security Conference that China, for several years, and we've known this, has been increasing their efforts to plant malware inside critical U.S. infrastructure. So what does this mean? Putting malware inside computers, essentially, that run our society. Computers that control our aviation system, computers that control electricity, water supply. Basically, just look around you. Everything that you're seeing working, lights turned on, water running, planes flying overhead, that is controlled by our infrastructure technology. And so Christopher Wray is saying that China's efforts to plant malware into this infrastructure is occurring now at, quote, a scale greater than we've ever seen before.
Technology is amazing, but it has ushered in this very scary reality.
Yep, I know. I know you can't, I often, it's interesting you say that. I was thinking yesterday how much simpler life was, right? When you didn't have the options to have somebody hack you, Obviously it was simpler in that we weren't on social media. There wasn't such, craziness. We weren't as distracted. We weren't as deadened with TV shows and all this stuff. But just like even that, geopolitically, things were just so much simpler. But China is really seeing this as a incredibly strategic weapon to undermine us, okay? And so this is so much of a threat that Christopher Wray is actually meeting with our allies as well as other countries to warn them against this happening and to also figure out how we could possibly work together to prevent it from happening. Mr. Wray met with the Five Eyes intelligence community this past weekend. That includes United States, Canada, New Zealand, Australia, and the United Kingdom. And they are allegedly collaborating on strategies to counter these cyber attacks. And additionally, Christopher Wray also visited Malaysia and India to talk with them about this encroaching threat by China. And according to the Wall Street Journal, quote, the Netherlands spy agencies said earlier this month that Chinese hackers had used malware to gain access to a Dutch military network last year. So this, I guess the thing to make us feel better is that we're not alone in being targeted. But that's also the thing that should make us feel worse, that this is a campaign by the Chinese Communist Party. And as I have talked about ad nauseum on this show, I really think if there are like two hallmarks of Timeless with Julie Hartman, it's number one, I'm a random topic generator. And number two, it's that I have been waving the red flag since I started the show about the threat of China. So I've talked about this, how China goes into countries all around the world, literally almost every single country in the world, and helps them. They go to Iran, build a railway line and reindustrialize their airport. They go to Colombia, say, hey, I'll help you with COVID vaccine rollout. We'll build a railway line in the capital of Colombia. They buy terminals at ports, shipping ports all around the world. They sell weapons to Russia. They go in Saudi Arabia and they build telephone lines to set up a Huawei telecommunication networks. The list goes on and on. But when China is helping you, essentially what they're doing is they're buying you off. And they had this Belt and Road Initiative celebration. The Belt and Road Initiative is essentially their imperialist campaign disguised as international aid. And they had a celebration back in October of 2023. And ready for this? 140 countries had representatives at that celebration in Beijing for the Belt and Road Initiative. That's like 75% of the world. And the only countries that were exempt were Western countries. But those countries are subjected to this similar quote unquote help, but also the infiltration. So it's just fascinating that the Netherlands has said that they did it. Chinese successfully got access to their military network. And last September, there was a story that amazingly just kind of skated by us here in the United States. And it was that we were hacked by the Chinese. This was, as I said, in September. According to the Associated Press, quote, state-backed Chinese hackers compromised Microsoft's cloud-based security and hacked the emails of government officials at multiple U.S. agencies, okay? So our U.S. Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, alongside the FBI, said, yes, we know that this happened, but they didn't access any kind of classified material with regard to these government accounts. I have skepticism about that. I think it's kind of implausible to think that if China hacks into the emails of government officials, they're not going to have access to classified information. I think it's pretty obvious that they would. But even if they didn't, the fact that they have the capability to hack, and they did it, not just they have the capability, they did it. And we've just let it go, don't care, not really talking about it. We as a population don't know about it. We're not outraged. That is really scary.